Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, it's that time of year again, folks. It's hurricane season, and I thought I should do a video to say, hey, these are the things that you really should be aware of during hurricane season. So when is hurricane season in the United States? Along the East Coast, along the Southern Coast, mostly. This is the prime Caribbean hurricane season, shall we say. And it is from June 1st to November 30th. That's right. That's a long time. That's almost 6 months worth of hurricane season. And you never know when a hurricane can pop up. You don't know how severe it is. You do not know roughly where it's going to go until like the last 24, 48 hours, where hurricane meteorologists are speculating or having these guides that have multiple lanes of where the cruise could go and how severe it's going to be, etc. But of course, a hurricane can cause severe damage. It can be life-threatening. It can cause massive floods. It can cause a lot of problems. And there is one cruise advantage, shall we say. Cruise ships are often touted as being hotels at sea. Well, the good thing about a hotel at sea, unlike your hotel destination on land, say in the Caribbean, if you decided to go to Mexico, Jamaica, or Bermuda, is that this hotel can move. It can get out of the way. So cruise ships will go out of their way, to have a pun if you will, to get out of the way of the worst weather of cruise. They don't want to put their billion-dollar ships in danger, their crew in danger, or their passengers in danger. They will go out of their way to avoid the worst weather, and they will try and head to even sunnier weathers if they have to. It is not uncommon for cruise ships to completely change the itinerary to get away from a storm. How often have we heard, oh, well, you have this Bermuda cruise. Well, yeah, we're not going there anymore. We're going up to Canada instead. So we avoid that hurricane. You can hear these stories and see this happening all the time. They don't want to have any issues and have that splattered across the news, right? Cruise ship caught in a storm. You rarely ever hear of this. It has happened sometimes where a captain made a mistake and left port when they shouldn't have and ended up being out there. Now, these ships are not fragile. They're built to withstand hurricane-type weather. Even the largest cruise ships in the world, like the Oasis-class cruise ships, are built to withstand this weather. They point their nose into the wind and they ride it out if they had to. They'd much prefer to get out of the way, but the worst that usually happens on these ships is maybe some minor flooding near the top decks, or the top decks have all their furniture blown around and stuff like that. But the actual passengers and crew on board remain safe. I see huge, oh, we got caught in a storm, and you see the top deck, it's all messed up and destroyed, but you don't hear of anybody actually being injured or anything on the cruise itself, which is really good, because I have heard people in hotels get caught in storms, and yeah, some of them didn't turn out real well. Normally they get to a place that's pretty safe, but unfortunately, you can't get out of the way of the hurricane if the airports are closed. Speaking of airport closures, this is a big extreme possibility. Not only of flight delays going to your cruise or coming from your cruise, but an airport itself can just completely shut down. Now, if an airport has to shut down for, say, 12 hours because a hurricane is passing by and the weather is too rough to fly in, just think of the flight delays in one airport in, say, Orlando, Florida for 12 hours. How many flights, how many passengers is that? Now figure out rerouting every single passenger to get back to that area or home from that area. It doesn't just cause delays for that 12 hours, it can cause massive delays for the entire rest of the week, if not longer. I've actually been in a case where I had my ship get in late, no problems because, I booked my flight through the airline for that one particular instance, and they promised to get me home. So they actually ended up putting me up in a hotel for 5 days because there was no available flight back to Ottawa from Florida. So I got to stay in Florida an extra 5 days on the company dime, if you will, of the cruise line. So they will look after you in certain situations, but you should be aware, and this is one of those reasons travel insurance for flight delays and cancellations are so important. Also, even a delay of an hour can delay you getting on time to those early flights you tried to book. And so you can get home instead of spending more time at the destination. You want to get home early from your trip. Those early flights can be an absolute nightmare if bad weather approaches. It's also not unusual for cruise ships to be so delayed getting back to port. I've seen cruise ships delayed 3 days because the weather in the cruise port just wasn't sufficient for them to come back and drop passengers off. I've seen them go to a different city altogether and drop passengers off because they couldn't get into that cruise port because of the weather. So you have to be aware of this situation. That's why it's always good to monitor what's going on with the hurricanes and the weather before your cruise. The first roughly 2 weeks before my cruise, I'm watching the weather and I'm keeping track of everything. And one good thing for a couple of cruise lines out there, Royal Caribbean has long employed a meteorologist. And that's for their entire Royal Caribbean group, who will advise them and give them updates, and combined with head office make decisions on ship routing and where they should go, where they shouldn't go. And I believe it's Craig Setzer is the new meteorologist for Royal Caribbean. And recently, Carnival Group, for their cruise line, has introduced Amy Sweezy, who is a longtime meteorologist from television. You might have seen her on some of the local shows on TV. Well, they work with the cruise lines themselves. They're hired by the cruise lines to monitor the weather and advise them on their ship deployments. And this includes whether or not you're going to get the perfect day at Coco Cay, whether or not you're going to get to the Bahamas, whether or not you're going to get anywhere that there's a hurricane possibly going to be either in the way when the cruise ship is traveling there or back, or hitting that island when you're heading there. They're not going to send a cruise ship into Jamaica if a hurricane is expected to hit in the next 6 hours. It's not going to happen. You're going to go somewhere else. So you need to know and be prepared for all these changes. Does that mean you shouldn't sail during hurricane season? Apparently not, because I've been looking at cruises recently all the way up until December, and there's very limited availability on a cruise ship. So people aren't necessarily afraid of sailing during hurricane season. They're more afraid of not getting on their cruise during this season. So yeah, but those are some things you really should be aware of. It can really be delays. And if you're sailing during hurricane season, maybe that insurance, not just health insurance this time, but cancellation insurance as well, delay insurance, trip delay insurance, that kind of insurance would really go a long way of easing your mind. As far as being safe during hurricane season, your travels, you will never be safer than traveling to a cruise ship during hurricane season than traveling to one of those hotels that cannot get out of the way. The cruise ships actively work to avoid all this. The hotels just have to sit and wait it out. And that's kind of what will happen. So yes, cruise ships are still the safest destination for your holiday travels, even during hurricane season. Let me know in the comments down below. Have you ever been stuck in a hurricane? I've had to outrun many hurricanes. I outran a typhoon with my buddy Tony on our way to China one time. Sorry, on our way to Japan from China. It was an experience, shall we say. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Have you ever experienced a hurricane at sea and been that close as well? Or have you been stuck at a hotel? Let me know as well. I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.